Good morning. This is the State Water Resources Control Board's Drinking Water Fee Stakeholder Meeting. Today is Thursday, June 11th. My name is David Ceccarelli. I'm the Chief of the Fee Branch here at the Water Boards. Today with me for this presentation is Glenn Osterhage, also with the Fee Branch, and John Russell, the Deputy Director of the Division of Administrative Services. This meeting is being webcast. And there is a teleconference number. I'd like to repeat that number for those that are on the webcast. That number is 1-888-808-6929, and the participant code is 460678. I do want to mention that there may be a little bit of delay on the call, so for what we say, it may take a moment until you hear our message come across. So please be patient with us on that. Everyone right now is muted on the phone. What we'll do is once we get through the agenda and we get to the open discussion, we will open it up and we'll have dialogue through the phone and we'll be able to answer your questions. Throughout the meeting, if you'd like to ask any questions, through the email, there's a link on your agenda under the says drinking water email on the first page, and we have staff here. They'll be monitoring those emails, and we'll be answering them as they come in. The other thing I also wanted to mention is that if during the time when you'd like to ask a question, please state your name and who you represent. Identify yourself. That way, those on the phone know who you're representing. We really appreciate that. At this moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it on to John Russell, and he's going to give an introduction statement. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I just wanted to mention that, this is we've been looking at the overall economy of the state. It's a tough year for everybody right now. So in general, just to set the tone for the meeting, we are not proposing to raise or increase drinking water fees this year. That's the overall message that we wanted to have you take away from this meeting. We will talk a little bit more about the cost drivers and everything, and we are showing you that simply because collectively we've all spent quite a bit of time over the last 3 or 4 years to get to the point where we are being as transparent as possible and providing you the information that you need to understand the program that we have. So we didn't want to end that practice. We wanted to keep that going. So we will go through the cost drivers and show you where we're at. But again, just to repeat, for the drinking water program, similarly to the water rights program and the water quality program, we are not proposing to raise fees. At least that's the staff recommendation to our board at this time. With that, I'll hand it over to Glenn, and he'll go through the numbers for us.
All right, thank you, John. Thank you, David. So we're going to go over the cost drivers. This is actually going to be a fairly short topic, and then I'll address some other things that go along with this. This chart that's now on the screen is the exact same chart we presented in our last meeting in March. So the May revise compared to the January proposed budget for the drinking water program, there were no changes. So at this meeting that we usually have in early June is to talk about any differences between the two iterations of the budget. But for this program, it's the same. We're still looking at expenditure-wise an increase of just over $100,000 for the program. Most of that obviously is related to the state operations. That's the salary costs, retirements. We have pro rata. There's actually a negative adjustment this year for pro rata. So just some of the normal costs of state operations that change on a yearly basis. So it's a very small change for this program. What's not reflected on this chart is just the expenditure side of the budget, is looking at what our revenue projections are. And as John indicated, since we're not at this point looking to recommend any fee changes when we go to the board this fall, we didn't present the information here. Once we get the adopted budget here shortly, and we have our next meeting in early August, we'll probably show the revenue projections along with the allocations in the budget, and kind of show you what we call a structural deficit of the program. So I'm just going to verbally go through those right now, and we'll provide more information probably in the August meeting. But looking at our revenue projections, we are looking at a structural deficit, which means our revenue numbers are going to be below our expenditure numbers. That generally means we need to do a fee increase. We were projecting potentially a fee increases of around 4 to 5% for each of the next 3 years. That would drive down our structural deficit. That gets the revenue and expenditures in alignment with each other. It also allows us to keep a prudent reserve. Right now, we're targeting a reserve for this fund of about 5%. Without any fee increases, our revenue is going to be about $1.8 million lower than our budgeted expenditures. Again, depending on what's in the adopted budget, we'll be able to try to mitigate some of those. And this is more globally across the state, whether or not it's reducing travel, not spending some contract dollars, holding vacancies. We should be able to mitigate some of our expenditures, drive them a little bit lower than what were allocated to try to balance those out. The other issue we have is our accounting office is still working through the conversion to FisCal and working to close out last year's fiscal year end as well as the current year numbers. So we know exactly what our fund reserve or balance is to make these determinations. So although we're looking to recommend no fee increases this year, there will be some implications going into next year. Once we get a resolution on the accounting numbers, we get an idea of what our actual expenditures are going to be for next year. We'll be able to tie in what we think our fee increases are going to be for future years. So again, right now, there's not a whole lot to go over since nothing really changed. We will be able to provide more information. Again, these revenue numbers I'm talking about, we'll show those in relation to the budget numbers, and then talk about what we're going to do as an organization to try to mitigate some of those differences, at least in the short term, and then look at future years and some of the impacts. So David, anything you wanted to add there?
No, I think, Glenn, I think you touched basis on everything. I would just say, managing the fund the last couple of years, and I know I mentioned this to stakeholders last year, that, as Glenn mentioned, there is a structural deficit, and however, at the same time, there was somewhat of a prudent reserve last year where we were able to use some of that reserve to kind of offset increases, but knowing that the structural deficit was going to carry into this fiscal year, and going into this fiscal year, we were looking at doing some type of increase. But as John Russell and Glenn has mentioned, is that at this point, staff's proposing no fee increases at this point. And then as Glenn mentions that in future years, we'll be having to look at that structural deficit again.
So we're going to look to Elizabeth. Do we have any email?
No questions on the email.
Okay. So again, as David said, if you have any questions, you can email those in. At this point, we'll open up the microphones. If anyone has any questions they want to go ahead and state over the phone. We realize, again, there may be a delay for some of you, so we'll hang on here for a few extra seconds just to make sure that what you're seeing and hearing gives you time to respond back to us. And I'm getting a word in my ear, maybe about a 30-second delay, so we'll hold on here for 30 to 40 seconds just in case some of you are needing to wait for that delay before you can respond back to us. Okay, I guess as I say, silence is golden. I had mentioned that our future meeting in August, it will be on August 6th. Each of our programs, as John indicated, we have water quality, water rights, drinking water, and later this morning we have an ELAP fee workshop as well. We will have follow-on meetings in early August, August 6th for drinking water, in which we'll be able to look at the adopted budget. We'll be able to work through with our finances, through management exec to make sure we come to a decision of what we want to do with our finances. Again, what mitigation steps we can do in these difficult economic times. If we're going to hold fee increases, even though our expenditures are higher than revenue, how can we work through some of those issues in the short term to make sure we kind of balance our numbers. As David said, this fund is probably in the best position in that we do have a projected reserve that will help offset in the short term. But again, every time we defer stuff, there is implications to future years. So David, anything you want to add?
No, I would just say, after this meeting, if you have any questions, concerns, we're tracking the budget process really closely. We're anticipating a budget here soon, and we'll be able to then kind of, go through and finalize the numbers. With that said, again, if you have any questions, please reach out to Glenn or I, and we'll be more than happy to help, answer your questions.
John, any final comments from you?
No, other than, I know this is a rough year for everybody right now, and we are trying to work as best we can with the stakeholders in terms of payment process and delays and things like that. So again, just to reiterate what David said, if you do have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out and contact us.
With that, we thank you everyone for taking your time. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Thanks.